We might not be aware of it, but these are the forces at work.
And no matter how good we are, and so many people talk to me about saying, oh, my friend, I'm sure they must be a Christian because they do this and they do that and hospital runs and stuff. But they're missing the point completely, because it's not about that. It's about what goes on in your heart. And I am always challenged, and I was only sharing on Monday in the prison, I was sharing that, you know, we never teach our children to be naughty. You know, we teach them to be good, but we have this inbuilt program that if there's a way to break the rules, we will. It's kind of fascinating. But actually, when you become a Christian, you know that something in your heart's changed. That doesn't stop you doing the wrong things, but you're aware of it. You're much more aware of it. And I always think that church is full of sinners, knowing that they're sinners, where many people that don't know Christ are not aware that they're sinners. They kind of just don't know. They just take it through. And I just want to emphasize that that doesn't mean that the stuff that they go through is any less. It's still important, and I think they still have a conscience and all of that. But I think when you have that the power of the Holy Spirit, as we know, in our hearts, you have a much higher knowledge of what's going on in your own life, and you know when you've gotten it wrong. You know when you've been sharp with somebody. You know. Nobody needs to come and tell you.
Well, I'm glad you you quoted from Ephesians chapter 2, because it says, doesn't it, says that you were, maybe it would be good to look at it.
Good.
Chapter 2, verse 1, it says, now he made us alive, it says, who were dead.
Yeah.
Now this is it's an amazing thing to say, and often we think that when we are dead, we can't respond to things, and things happens to you, we can't do anything about it. We can't respond. That's the connotation behind it. Yeah. Things happen to us, we are powerless to do something about it. But even after we become a Christian, the sin is still there, Satan is still there, self is still there.
Absolutely.
Now we're told to. Then there's another whole lot of process happens, doesn't it? Now before you answer that, go back to that time. How did you come to the Lord? What was the process? Who did somebody share the gospel with you, or did you go to a church, or did you go to an evangelistic rally? What happened?
I was given on my milk round a Good News Bible, and I always jest that I must have been an awful milkman for someone to give me something as awful as a Bible. That was how I struck it, and I suppose it was that kind of realization that the one thing I wanted was money. You know, if anybody's going to give you a tip, most milkmen get really kind of what I call poor class wine, because you nip it out for the milkman because you don't like it. But money was what you were after, because for me, every January or February, I'd go off to South Africa or wherever for a break, because it's a tiring job, you know, running a business. So to get a Bible, why would you have that? That's kind of odd thing to have. And so when I was in this place in my bedroom on my own, and I kind of sensed, whether it was God's voice, could I say it was an audible voice? No. But I heard this in my head that said, read the book. And I was not a reader. I'm very lazy when it comes to that. I'd rather watch a movie or a DVD. Let somebody else do the work. You know, why should I plough my way through? It used to make me laugh with my mum. My mum used to knit. Every evening she'd knit. I think, why do you do that? Why don't you just go down the shop, buy a pullover and put it on? End of, you know? And so the idea of reading was not big in my life. But read the book. The only book that I could think of at that time was this Good News Bible. And I kind of had this sense that God was saying, read this book. And so I did. I did. I picked it up and kind of, as I say, looked in Genesis and Numbers, and it wasn't Numbers, it was actually
I particularly like those figures in it. You know,
those and Leviticus, what's that about? You know, I'd never heard of this sort of stuff. And I remember throwing it across the room thinking, this is garbage. I really did. And that's twice I've done that. So God's a real forgiving God, because when Christine died, that morning, I took her Bible and I wrecked that. But I threw this Bible across the room and went on with whatever I was doing. And then when I came back to that place to pick it up off the floor, it had fallen down, face down on the floor. And when I picked it up, I read. It had fallen open at Ephesians 2, and I read this. And it just told me that God loved me, and as bad as I was, all the stuff I'd done, there was nothing I could do to earn his love, that he loved me. And it was just an incredibly moving experience. And from that day to this, no matter what trials, tribulations I go through, that is just so solid in my heart. It would never go.
Well, just a thought came to me, John. You were in a bad way. You were a good way, but you went on a bad way.
Bad way, a very bad way.
Then you come into God way.
Yeah, God. That's good. I like that.
You like that one?
Yeah. It's
anyway,
good.
But it's interesting. We talked about being dead.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that we find in the Bible, and I find that amazing when I study the Bible.
Yeah.
Time and time again, God tells us that there are things in us we want to respond, but we can't respond.
Mm.
But something about well, you mentioned the Holy Spirit. When He comes inside your life, He makes you alive, doesn't He?
I think I want to pick up on this dead thing, because I've got to say that people who aren't Christians and not interested in stuff of spiritual things would say that we were the dead ones, because their life is in all of the partying and all of that stuff.
Exactly.
But they look at us. And I have to say, when I used to see people coming out of church, I'd very much think that on a Sunday morning, I can remember looking back thinking, they must have funerals every Sunday, because people used to come out of church looking so miserable. And yet you'd go down the road into the local pub an hour after the service, and then they'd all be laughing because they'd had a couple of beers and thinking, oh, now they're happy. But when they came out of the church, they were certainly not happy. And so, that kind of expression of being dead, for those that don't know Christ, they'd look at us and say, we're dead. But actually, it's when you find Christ that you have real life and have it in its fullness, and that's amazing.
Well, John, I'm going to rename you John Goodway.
John Goodway.
Folks, you're watching Simply the Truth with me, Tom Chacko, and thank you for joining me today and my special guest, John Goodway, or John Goodway. And we are just talking about, and we're going to be talking about evangelism, and he's an evangelist, he's a pastor. He's just sharing about how he became a Christian, how his life has turned around by an encounter with Jesus Christ. And if some of the things we've been talking about, and you want to contribute by email, by text, please do that. The information will come up on the screen. If you want to text us, it's 07781 472 or you can email us at live@talkgod.com. And as always, we'll open up the lines in the second part of the program around about the 2 o'clock mark, and we'll have you call us and share with us. And if you want to put a question or a comment, or if you want to discuss something that we're talking about further, then please feel free to do that. So make sure you take hold of the number when it comes up, and please ring in, because I always say this, we leave it at the last 10 minutes and everybody started to come in and it doesn't work. So get in there quick and put your questions, and we're always willing to answer the best abilities possible and what we can do. Not that we have all the answers here, but we know a man who knows, we know a God who knows all the answers, and we have a book that has all the answers. So we will endeavor to answer your question in the best way possible. So thank you for joining me today and my guest. And John, as I said, you became a Christian.
Yep.
Did life become nice and rosy for you?
Not particularly. I want to pick up on the fact that I mentioned earlier that I had a Jehovah's Witness call to visit me. And that's not the only role that they played in my life, because on my milk business, I used to notice on Saturdays where my milk round was, that Jehovah's Witnesses used to be out knocking doors in many of the streets where I was delivering milk and collecting my money. And I used to wonder why they'd want to do that. As a double glazing salesman, you'd maybe knock 10 doors and 9 people would be rude to you, but one would invite you in and you'd make money. You'd make good money. As a milkman, I made good money by delivering the milk and goods. That's what the business was about. But these people weren't selling anything, so they weren't making any money. And you can see the kind of role that money has in your life, until you come to know simply the truth, as it were. So that was fascinating for me. Why would these people do that? Why would I used to hear people being incredibly rude to them. And I think, why would you do that on a Saturday? There's loads of stuff you could do. And it wasn't until I became a Christian, and then I read in Romans 10,